Okay. So can you hear me first? Maybe I should start to check our devices because I don't see any reaction. Can you just confirm if you can hear me well? Please? Yeah, okay. So you can hear,
All
but
good.
you don't have ideas on our last module. No worries. Maybe someone would like to
Naomi, sorry.
share. Yeah, please.
Sorry, I didn't have the chance to hear you. So can you please just repeat your question?
Okay. I was saying that last week we didn't meet, but we shared several case studies in the platform. And I would like to have your impressions on these case studies, which of them maybe echoes to your own context, or if you have any specific thoughts about them. And for as a reminder, these case studies and this module was following the previous module on skills needs assessment where we had Stefanos as guest. And then the week after we had a module on skills response. So the logical, let's say, train of thoughts of the module as first you had been introduced to the methodologies on how to assess skills needs and how to green existing skills, or how to create, to include new skills towards this greening transition, to this just or green transition. And then the module after this one, meaning the last week module, was about what kind of initiatives could be implemented to respond to the skills needs. And during this module, we shared several case studies, what's happening in over the world, but also in specific countries, what's happening in specific enterprises, and this kind of case study. So I was wondering if you had the time to go through them, and if some of these case studies echoes to your context, or you have any specific thoughts about.
Noemi, this is Bettina.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello,
Uh,
Bettina.
hello. Listen, I have to admit, I was actually thinking of either writing to you or if we have the platform now. I was a bit confused. Module 4, which is also why I did not respond to that forum question, because it wasn't clear to me. At a certain point in time, it was referring to the core readings. At another, it was case studies. Then I looked in the instructions, and I'm now there again. So with the case studies, do you refer to the reskilling revolution, preparing 1 billion people for tomorrow's economy and training for green jobs? Or are you referring to the other one with this long text with the 40 pages plus?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Very relevant, actually, because this specific module, the core module, is the summary of the concept, what theoretical knowledge and conceptual knowledge you can take away from the module. And then all the case studies are examples, concrete examples, initiatives over the world. And now the question on the forum discussion was referring to all of the case studies, but we know that some case studies are too long, so they are a kind of additional resources to you to understand how these initiatives are implemented. Some of them are shorter, so we were expecting you to maybe pick up some case studies from that and there. But I understand your concern regarding the question, so maybe we have to reshape it a bit. But the idea was that if you can go through some of the case studies, some are longer, some are shorter, but for the module, we were expecting you to at least have a look on the shorter ones. There was also some videos, and then answer to the question and interact on this.
Yeah, I think the video didn't work, at least not in my case. I tried the link, and I also wrote a message in the forum that the link didn't work. There are two texts. One is the risk killing 1 billion people, and the other one is one moment. Well, I don't want to keep everyone waiting because of this of me not understanding.
I think I know. Yeah, I think I see what you were talking about. Okay,
Yeah.
that's well noted.
Yeah.
We will try to fix it with our colleagues. I see
Okay,
also
good.
Diego and Susan. Thank you very much, Bettina. I see Diego's and Susan's hands.
Hi.
Maybe starting.
Apologies. I know that a participant is waiting to be let into the Zoom. She reached me through messaging. Jelena Manic. If you can just, it says that the.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry for disturbing.
No problem. Thank you very much. Yes, Diego.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. So just to be clear, so I'm just make a comment about Module 4, right? We're referring to Module 4. So in my case, I went through all the documents, but just maybe to develop a little bit more what I put in the forum about the upskill for future initiative. I actually decided to answer on this one because it kind of like reminded me one of the projects that I coordinated in the past, that it was actually about labor migration. We actually were also collaborating also with ILO. And why? Because it was a very practical exercise I found where employees and companies were have been working together in order to tackle the issue of being able to upskill employees, no, just with this vision of the just transition and maybe anticipating challenges that might be with employees concerning losing their jobs. So I found myself a little bit like into it because we actually carry out a similar exercise working with employees and with companies, but in this case was mostly to prepare some employees to go into this labor migration system to other companies. But actually the dynamics were quite similar, where you were working, you know, really, how should I say, together, employees and the companies. With a common objective. In this case, was just to upskill the employees. Since I am actually more like someone has been coordinating and managing like projects, so I find myself quite comfortable with this experience because I found that it was very practical. Like it was like a test I found. And then what I say in my comment is like probably the challenges that I see here is since I think there was a few countries and a lot of companies in this experience, but what I was already trying to see is what's the way forward. Like here it was like a test, but if you want this to become more like a policy, I can see what a challenge this would be, and also that this project was actually implemented exclusively in European countries. So I was just launching a little bit the discussion or trying to put on the table how, even though the project says that it could be implemented in all kind of contexts, but I was wondering how realistic it would be to actually implement this project in different contexts, like for example what we call the global south, right? In contexts that are not European contexts. So yeah, just developing a little bit more of what I said. I think I wrote yesterday in the forum. That was my contribution.
Thank you very much, Diego. Actually, it's very accurate because you were not only sharing an experience on initiatives, similar initiatives, but you've already touched upon our topic of the week on social dialogue and how to involve national stakeholders. You also mentioned the difference between implementing such program in Europe and in South area countries, and you are very lucky today because I think our guests would could give us a very good example of social dialogue implemented in because she's from Philippines, but I will let her introduce herself right after our discussion. So I think that you can even reflect more on this question and then ask your concrete questions to her. Thank you very much. I see also Suzanne's hand. Yes. Okay, she was just saying that she has unstable internet. Okay, so thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you very much for your interaction with during this. Maybe there is a lack of exchange among the participants in the forum discussion, but I think this first exchange is very useful for us to understand what everyone has done, what kind of experience you've already have in these areas, and also what kind of what do you think about the case studies and what's happening in the world right now. So I would like now to give the floor to our guest. As I said, she's from Philippines, and she's going to talk about the social dialogue on greening skills. So Georgina, would you like to have the floor and introduce yourself to our participants, please? And once again, thanks a lot for your flexibility, because in Filipino it's quite late. It's already 7 in the evening. So thank you very much for your time, and we are happy to have you today. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Noemi. I would just want to confirm that everyone can hear me well. Just a thumbs up, perhaps. Right. So happy to meet everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. In my time, it will be good evening. And to those who celebrating also the Eid today, it's Eid Mubarak to our Muslim sisters and brothers around the world. So happy to be celebrating with you, and really nice to see that everyone has logged in on time, and I hope that this will be a very interesting exchange. Allow me to also introduce myself a bit. I am from the Philippines. I am an ILO, a project technical officer. So I think very much similar to what Diego does, perhaps. No, we've been running projects primarily more focused on green jobs, green skills. And so that's why I was very pleased when Noemi reached out to say that it would be a good opportunity to also share the experience that we have been having here. Not to say though at the onset that this is not necessarily a success story altogether, but because it's a how do you call that, a learning in progress at the same time. When the greening of TVET initiatives in the ILO was formalized through the guidelines around 2 years ago, we were just also among the first few country offices that tried to embrace and worked with our partners on that. And for that, so you would understand more the context, Noemi, if it's all right, I could share my screen already.
Yes, please,
Right.
Georgina.
Yes, hold on a bit. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Okay, great. So pretty much the reason why I suppose we'd be a very good candidate for this, because definitely at this point in time, we're also undergoing the same process. And hopefully, in as much as we would like to share the experience, that you could also pick up points that you could use in terms of either adapting it into your own contexts, or perhaps I would welcome very much if there would also be some important, things that you could note or insights that you could share that perhaps could help us improve also how we're doing things here. Right, so let me move to the next slide. Okay. So pretty much what we'll be talking about is, of course, how we are doing the pilot implementation of this greening of TVET framework. And from that, I will share with you some of the practical applications of the processes that we're doing in as far as embedding social dialogue into that context. So just also to provide a bit of a background. So Philippines in Asia, for those of you who may not, who could be familiar, so we're among the Southeast Asian countries. And in our region, we were among the pioneer countries who have immediately tried to implement initiatives in line with green jobs in line with the green jobs advocacy of the ILO, which now has been more aligned towards climate action and just transition. But altogether, since the early 2010 and until currently, we have had various initiatives, which includes greening of enterprises, looking at specific sectors and how to facilitate green jobs creation in them, including a good deal of work in terms of amending and aligning our policies towards it. And along with that, of course, looking at skills development. And as such, TVET is very strategic for our case. In 2016, we have also implemented, or rather had the endorsement of a law that we call the Philippine Green Jobs Act, which actually puts together 21 different implementing agencies or ministries towards the mandate of supporting the growth of green jobs in the country, and along with that, aligning it to the respective social sustainable development activities. So we see that green sectors and the employment that eventually will emerge from there, considering that we actually align to the target, the sustainable development targets that are indicated in the national plans, could bring about growth in the economy as well as an estimated increase in employment. So this is coming off from an econometric studies, which was done sometime in 2017, 2018. And going towards this current implementation plan for the labor and employment sector, the country actually also prioritizes and keeps its commitment to still include green skills and green jobs, along with ensuring that most of the programs can also contribute towards climate change and the other green commitments that we've indicated. So in essence, as far as policies are concerned, when we talk about green jobs and green skills, we are including that under the first priority of ensuring that there is maximized productive, remunerative, freely chosen, and sustainable work opportunities. And as such, we have also designed an HRD, or a Human Resources Development Plan, that could actually help support these targets and growth that we have envisioned for green jobs. And naturally, under education and skills development, TVET is a very strategic entry point for us. And as such, most of the ILO projects that came in around the time of 2015 until current has always had green TVET as an element to it, alongside also with the Green Jobs HRD plan. So to start with, and how our TVET framework is anchored on, it is definitely part of the department, the work and the mandates of the department or the Ministry of Labor, to which the TVET authority is linked. And this, in fact, is also overseen and managed by what we call a board. No? So it's a TVET board. So at the national level, this has tripartite representation. But even so, when you go down to sector and industry level, these TVET boards reflect the same level of membership. So it also ensures that not only are these representation of our tripartite partners, which are normally called in as the government, the employers and the workers representation are organized or are convened in a more systematic manner. It also ensures that if all these three different representations are around the table discussing skills development, we see that the gap between the demands of the industries and the skill standards are more met because they can ensure that these requirements that are being integrated in the TVET frameworks actually respond to the labor market needs. So in the law, and I've cited it here, that in terms of the memberships, that they specifically indicated the participation of both employers and workers when they refer to the industry. So the industry or the private sector does not necessarily mean only the corporations or the establishments that represent major that comprises the industry, but rather also provides for a platform that workers and the labor concerns are likewise included. So both the supply and demand dynamics can aptly be reflected. So why I'm telling you this is because so that you understand that at the context of it, I mean, for the Philippines, I think integrating social dialogue process is somehow very natural because even our laws require us to do it as such. And the way that the TVET authority has been organized is also aligned to this very same instructions, so to speak. So if you look at even in terms of the board membership and in terms of number, both the employers organization and those representing the labor sector have equal numbers of memberships. So ensures that when there are things that need to be voted on or agreed upon in terms of either stipulations or new policies for skills development, or including as well to the level of the training regulations for a specific occupation, these ensure that both the employers and the workers' concerns are very much integrated. So if I would move on, one other practical application that we saw that helped support social dialogue in the process of greening and in the process of updating of training regulations for TVET is through a process which we call skills needs anticipation. So there are various methodologies around it, but mainly it refers to the activities that assesses the future skills requirements or needs in the labor market in a strategic way, and using these as methods so as to understand what needs to be updated and where the demand is going and if things need to be changed. So basically this process, which is ideally done regularly, to ensure and to check whether qualifications are still in place or they're already obsolete, helps us establish a systematic platform where social dialogue on needs and skill strategies can be discussed. Because as I've mentioned, and referring back to the earlier slide which I showed, all the findings that we get from exercises such as the SNA are also feeding into the details being discussed at the industry board and at the TVET national level TVET board. So in 2021, so this was when we started working on greening TVET. Earlier on, we were also referring to the UNESCO framework alongside, of course, with ensuring that there are elements that are more familiar for the ILO. And this was even before the release of the official guidelines, official version of the guidelines, which I think was only done so in 2022. So we launched a skills needs anticipation initiative, and this was fully guided as well by the ILO's methodologies. And we focused on two sectors. Mainly, it's the construction sector and also the, we call it business processing and outsourcing sector in the Philippines. So from that exercise, we actually made use of a workplace skills and satisfaction survey methodology, where we actually gathered responses from both sectors, covering a number that was statistically defined for us to be able to say that the findings would be statistically significant. And we made sure that in terms of also the process by which these surveys were rolled out and implemented is that it reflects not only the employer's side of the responses, but likewise also specifically referred to how the workers would respond to the very same questions in terms of understanding needs and skills, requirements and gaps that they need to actually address. At the same time, this actually had to pass through not only that survey procedure, but also a number of industry consultations. And during the industry consultations, again, it is almost synonymous to having a social dialogue roundtable where government, which is the TESDA, which is the TVET Skills and Skills Development Authority who ran it, were interfacing and directly addressing concerns either as brought about by the survey or as being brought about to them during the time, because it was an opportunity to do so during the consultations. And these were, of course, further validated by having our own research team look at it and providing secondary data to ensure that everything else is actually a reflection of the current realities in the industry. So these consultations were also done in order to finalize the study, and at which case this was also launched and eventually made part and presented to the TESDA or the TVET National Board. So at the same time, like just to share with you in terms of the coverage of the survey questionnaire, these were all the areas that we looked at. It's employment, compensation, critical occupations, how and in what way can business productivities be improved, adoption of various advancements, skills in relation to digitalization or green technology and other workforce development matters. And some key findings, I would just like to show you the portions that are relevant to skills for green transition are on the following. So they have noted on what emerging skills are there, what top sustainable industry developments should they be looking after in the next few years. And at the same time, there was a qualitative part that also tried to gather the current status of skills development, training, reskilling, and so on being done by these companies in as far as trying to cope with the requirements of the green transition. So this is actually published in a study. Perhaps I can share also the link with Noemi later on. It will be nice to look at it for further reference. But this is also co-published with the Philippine Constructors Association. So this association, in fact, is also a key member of the industry board, and he have been mainly doing a lot of the how do you call it, the organizing recently, because these are independent boards, operating independently to the TVET authority. So in as much as the last few years, they were the ones who were leading a lot of the activities and initiatives also from that end. So being that it was a co-published document with the industry board itself, we feel that this somehow is a very concrete way to show that what these findings were actually also resonating with what they would put forward as key issues that matter to them, and including specific strategic areas where they would also like to work on and where they would find comfort in perhaps collaborating with government as well. So those findings also found their way as input when we started looking at greening the specific curriculum for specific occupations and qualifications. And a more broad-based application of our social dialogue processes, the way that we integrate it is that for these key developments, we usually introduce and sometimes we call it socialize, or we present them more broadly in platforms such as the annual Green TVET e-forum, similar to what you have seen here. So we usually give the latest trends including, say, for example, key findings from initiatives such as the skills needs anticipation studies. And this is also a good way to open it up to broader stakeholders. So not only the tripartite, but the other stakeholders, which could include also communities, at the same time, local governments who are hosting specific industries, as well as, of course, the NGOs, the CSOs, or even the academe. Although in more often than not the cases, the academe is also part and also invited as key members of the industry board. So aside from the industries themselves, there are very strategic members that are being invited to actually support the initiatives and actions of the industry board. So in terms of the components of the Green TVET framework, and if we can look at it here, the Green TR stands for Training Regulations and Curriculum Development, is where a lot of the preliminary social dialogue processes are being embedded on. But at the same time, as you can see, if you would refer to Green Community and Workplace, Green Research, which does not necessarily only involve research within technologies, but it's more so looking at innovations that would more or less involve society members, in effect, and including when you look at the component on green institutional culture. All of these different elements are actually providing for platforms where social dialogue and engagements and agreements and mechanisms can be mainstreamed and institutionalized. So just a sample of these training regulations, like if you would look at the construction side right over here at the lower left corner. So these so far are the different competency standards that have been already worked on by the different industry boards to actually contain some green competencies in them. And as such, their training regulations have currently been updated and have been approved by the TESTO board. So the way that all those inputs come into play and actually have exact, how do you call that, direct contribution to what happens in TVET rollouts is basically completed with the release of the updated training regulations. Right, so basically, I mean, right now we're still learning, and I think if I would talk about like what could be the key challenges, I mean, definitely the process is long. As you've seen, the SNA process that I've shown you started in 2021, but in fact, groundwork started way earlier than that. And we were only able to finalize the results of that, I think, in 2022 as well. And so from then on is only the time that we were able to work on either mainstreaming and picking up these points and putting them in the updated training regulations. So that covers for not necessarily what you can call a swift process. And given that advancements and technology is coming out really fast and quick, there has to be a better and more agile way of doing such. But we're still learning. And right now, the other thing also that I think I could pretty much note is that when you talk about the whole process, I mean, we are doing it on a sectoral basis. And so far, as you know, there are about 38 industry boards to speak of. And we were only able to cover like around 4 so far right now. So that we are also working now with 2 on logistics and in agriculture. So if there had to be something more broad-based then perhaps the process that I've just shown you might be a long process. And maybe what we should be looking at is perhaps looking at the national level boards where you have the tripartite representation. So, I mean, I think it differs, but in our context, this is what we've seen to have been more or less implementable. We are getting good feedback anyway from the results that we get, especially with regards to the results coming from the skills needs anticipation processes. But we are also getting some feedback with regards to like how often do they need to do this, considering that the advancements are actually happening very fast, that they see that if it's done on, I mean, it's almost impossible to do it on an annual basis. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing anything else than just that. So these are things that we need to balance. So in summary, we say that, yeah, definitely we can see that you can mainstream social dialogue definitely in the TVET framework. But what could help in its implementation is if you have policies and legislation that mandates you to do such. In as much as TVET frameworks benefit a lot from having these social dialogue processes embedded in them, we have to make sure that it still remains operationally effective. So not to overburden the whole TVET framework, because that's not the only thing that the framework does. It still has to cover the mandate of rolling out these courses, ensuring that these graduates eventually land themselves in jobs. And so this integration with employment opportunities is also one other part that hopefully we could cover. And in terms of the social dialogue, it's one of the more emerging concerns that always gets in the discussion table. So I think with that, I'm happy to end here. If there are any other things that you think I can share, I'll be happy to start the conversation. So Noemi, I pass it back on to you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Georgina. So you've just presented the Philippines context on social dialogue on how to implement a greening TVET strategy. Actually, because in the framework of ILO project, we used to work with tripartite constituents. So it was more with employers, workers, organization, and governments. But for skills development, you can very easily understand that many other actors and stakeholders should be taken into account. And I think that what have been done in Philippines reflected also this part. Now, maybe just to, you've also summarized it very well on the challenges and also on this involvement of these stakeholders, of course. And you've mentioned also the tools that you've used to conduct the process, which is very important, and we think that this tools could be one of the biggest takeaway of such training, to understand how it could work, and also to kind of ready to use tools. Of course, should be adapted for each context and each country. But I think this presentation is very complete regarding all the means that you've put in place in order to conduct a social dialogue on greening TVET. So now I would like to ask our participants what do they think about this presentation and about Philippines experience, and if they have something to share from their own country as well, maybe to complement or as a good practices or as a challenges that could be reported and shared with all of us. So please don't hesitate to raise your hand or to open your mic and to share with all the colleagues here. Thank you. Yes, Kutlai, I think. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you so much for your presentation. While towards the second half of your presentation, you mentioned that there are 38 industry boards, but you're only covering 4 of them. You said it's not an easy process. And if I'm not mistaken, you said agriculture and logistics were among those 4. I was just wondering, how did you choose those 4 to start with out of those 38? Did you prioritize, or did you started working with the ones who volunteered? Thank you.
Right. Thanks so much. I think that was something that would have been good for me to mention. So first and foremost, yes, we have to work with willing souls. That was the first. I think it beats any prioritization process. Though in terms of prioritizing, we also have what we call key employment generator sectors. In which case, this is basically mentioned in all of the planning documents of the labor and employment, and including the technical education skills development planning processes in the country. So, and in which case, I think, at least to share with you, like construction and the BPO, the business process outsourcing sector, is indeed part of the key employment generators. Logistics eventually is actually how do you call it, bundled together with transport, but transport is much too broader. We are only able to get more interest from logistics. So that's why we thought, all right, why not start with the subsector rather than trying to wait for the whole sector to be ready? Because as you said, I think one of the, in terms of how we can balance, trying to move with our ideal frameworks and systems, we have to remain practical at all times. Agriculture is always identified as well as a key employment generator sector. And at the same time, we're happy that at least in terms of consolidating interests, they were always more than ready to participate in programs. Yeah, thanks for that.
Thank you very much. We have another question from Diego. Maybe before giving you the floor, Diego, let me share the appreciation from Kylie. I hope I pronounce your name correctly. Thank you, Georgina, for the excellent presentation. You have provided some extremely valuable information, insights, and practical considerations regarding frameworks development, the reality of implementing such a framework, green skills, and the need for quality industry and employer representations. Thank you very much, Kylie. Yes, Diego, please.
Yes, well, me too. I would like to thank you. I found it really interesting. I know the Filipino context, but unfortunately not on the TVET sector. But so me, it was mostly a few questions actually. First of all, I was thinking that in the Philippines, the TVET is a competency 100% from the state, right, to a central level. And I imagine that it makes it easier. As you know, in other countries, it's not the case. I'm thinking of, for example, when I'm talking to you from Spain, So but at one moment you mentioned that local governments might be also involved in the process. Just if you can maybe develop a little bit more, just to help us think through the process in our context. That's the first point. Then a second question is, as I say, I know the Filipino context, but not the TVET sector. But
Yeah.
I have the feeling that informality in the Philippines, it might be also an issue. So how you consider informality in this process, so that they can also have take advantage of the whole process. And then maybe the last my last question that is already very particular to the process, because I understand that it's quite new. Actually, you're still working on it, but I find it extremely interesting. So I was thinking in terms of already impact for the interest of people to start choosing trainings or and developing skills that are going to be necessary in the next future because of the work that you're doing. Is this already being included in some kind of career guidance services or things like that, just to be able that this is also useful for the young people accessing the labor market in the coming years? Thank you very much.
Right. Thanks a lot for that, Diego. Let me start with the first one that you asked. Yes, you're correct. In terms of competency standards and qualifications framework, this is definitely nationally driven. And as such is one of the key things why there is a TVET authority that provides for the release of the updating of these various training regulations. And in fact, as you've said, this makes it easy for rolling it out. No, like for example, if there is like new requirements that are being put in under construction, then as soon as these new training regulations are released, all the other institutes which are accredited by TESDA, so that's the qualifier, which are accredited by the authority, had to use them. But at the same time, it does not stop other institutions who are also TVET the private TVET institutes, so those which are operating on very specific programs, which are either based on an agreement with an already existing industry. They can actually define, they can redefine these contents, no? But in terms of the assessment now, because as we have said, there is a centralized qualifications framework, they would have to comply with the same qualifications framework. Now, if, for example, their graduates eventually still pass the assessments and certification, then they still get the skill certificates. So in which case, if the TVET Institute is not necessarily publicly owned, there is also room for enhancing the programs. There is also room for adding some additional, some additional fields of study or thematic units and modules, which may not necessarily be required. But if, for example, the institute sees this as necessary for whatever they're preparing their graduates for, then that actually is possible to do so. And for so long as when they get assessed, the graduates eventually would show that they can actually comply with the qualifications framework. So I mean, I think in a way we can say that we are operating this, like that's a national standard and whatever, and that becomes the minimum. So whatever they want to top up to it, it's fine, it's all right. Now, in which case, I would like to go to your query now, because like, for example, I did mention local governments. I didn't include it in this presentation, but I think one of the more important things that's happening right now in the country is where we would like to move into what you call an area-based skills needs mapping, and in which case that is where the localized area would respond to in terms of the TVET offerings, particularly if this will be offered in the publicly owned institute. Right. So in a way, it actually tries to map what are the existing requirements and demands for qualifications, for skills in the area, in the local government. And this kind of mapping exercise is being done in conjunction or in cooperation of the local government, because they can come up with their own programs, primarily so because funding of these programs are not necessarily just restricted to the national agency support. The local government can allocate their own specific funds if there are very specific industries and key employment generators that they would like to highlight in their area. Say, for example, an area which is known to be a tourism area would have the interest of the local government to also continue supporting skills development towards enhancing the service delivery of the tourism sector. Alongside with other things, like if an area is known to be an area where fisheries and agriculture is really high, then local government joins with that the TVET national authority to enhance delivery, add funds to support skills development in this chosen or in this respective industry. And in which case, I think the way that you ask the question is excellent, because now it goes into the informality. In terms of looking at now how these required skills are being met, some of them may not necessarily be just met by graduates, but there are others who actually would have to learn skills on using other means. So there are various ways now that they are also working on, I think in terms of equivalency and ensuring that these skills which are acquired through non-formal methods could also be accredited and certified according to the national qualifications. That's one. And also now the government or the National TVET agency is also promoting their programs called, we call it like the online TVET. So in which case students or learners, especially those who could still be regarded as informal and would like to get formal training, can do that for free and actually acquire these learnings and eventually have themselves certified and assessed if they meet the qualification standards. Also, I do hear now that there is a move to look at micro-credentialing. Because sometimes one of the key challenges of informality in terms of skills development is mostly either they don't have the resources to fund their learning, nor do they have the time to actually invest, because most of them might already be working or already engaged. And in so offering other pathways for them to actually go from that state towards a more professionalized formal status as a skilled professional is being offered, and micro-credentials are also one of the key things that are being offered. I mean, not to mention, of course, that there's so much attention now being provided for offering scholarships to augment for costs for learning, offering these opportunities for apprenticeships at the same time. So which includes, again, another set of intervention where you have both the formal methods and non-formal, the alternative learning modalities we called ALMs, to be able to capture those which could be more or less still in the state of informality in terms of trying to move them or transition them out of that. Because we do see that one of the pitfalls of informality is definitely it actually limits their access to possible decent work opportunities. If the skills are not formalized, or if at all that their learnings, although they are could be highly skilled, but because they don't have the credentials for them, it actually limits their opportunities to actually get into their set professions and careers. And in which case, moving on to the last question, we only touched upon TVET, but the whole career guidance and career counseling issue is much broader than that, because that also includes the other stakeholders with regards to higher education, and also to the involvement of the Ministry of Labor and Employment, because career guidance and public, how do you call that, the placement agencies are the ones that are actually more active. Yes,
implement
that's right.
Services.
Yeah, they are the ones who are more active on this. But we do see that when we release this SNA, because this actually are broadly how do you call that, broadly disseminated, and as such, that's why we have our the green TVET e-forums, and there is also an e-TVET forum, which is not necessarily for green, but more for broader for broader areas, or for broader learning areas. These kinds of studies are fully disseminated in that, and hopefully they find their way definitely into these various skills frameworks, career guidances, and public placement agency support. So I think that's how we can we make sure that this is broadly disseminated as well. Yeah, so that's it. I hope I'm able to respond. Thank you. I know
Thank
it's
you for
long,
this
sorry.
extensive answer, but useful. Yeah, thank you very much, Georgina. Maybe a comment from my side before asking the question from Kylie in the chat box
Yeah,
about the
yeah.
involvement of local government. I think there is also a big role regarding the inclusion for some group of population that would need more support from the government to integrate the skills, the TVET and skills system to benefit from public services. I think local government has also a role to play
Yes.
there. You touched upon informality, Georgina, so we can qualify this area as also a vulnerable group, because actually they don't benefit all of the decent working conditions as those who are in the formal economy. But also for migrants, for example, it could be a focus of local governments to include them in the TVET system. So just as a complement to this answer. So let's now read the question from Kylie. The TESDA approach has been advanced for a long time. The centralized approach provides excellent support for quality assurance, processes, and procedures. It has also shown great strength in providing nationally driven approaches, and the TVET Authority provides online digital videos and skills training resources. Is the TESDA currently working on digital tools and resources for these established and notified competency standards related to green skills for all training packages? Georgina.
Right. Thanks for that. Yes, thanks for that, Noemi, and thanks, Kylie, for actually referring to TESDA and currently the current progress of their work. Yes, there are actually some digital resources available, particularly for the competency, like this very standard competency that they would like to see across all possible occupations that they certify, which is what they call like the baseline for what they call green skills. So this is, I know, being developed, and I've seen some of it, portions of it that they are putting together. I think there is one even that's already available in their online TVET system. Perhaps I will also just put it in the chat. While I will share with Noemi so that you can also put it in their forum, the online TVET platform, because I think for exploration purposes, you can like make your own account and then just go through the courses and look at the different online videos that they have. They do have some, like for example, for competencies in solid waste, that's already available. The one which is more on the general green, understanding of green skills. I think they already have that too. But I suppose in terms of like the full package, like say for example, a green plumber, like if it's related to competency standards for construction related occupations, I don't think they have that yet, because one of the things that we do know that we're still working with them until now is really finalizing the part of the certification, the assessment and certification process. And how that eventually will be finally rolled out. So we have just gone through with updating of training regulations. We're moving towards working with them on the certification part. So yeah, thank you. But I will share with you the website so you can actually look at it also. It's
Okay. Another question from thank you, Kylie. Another
thanks,
question
Kylie.
from Dragana. How specifically did you go about identifying the green skills to be integrated into TVET? Which approach did you use for the SNA at sector level? Sorry if I missed this at the very beginning. No worries, Dragana.
Yeah, thanks, Dragana. Well, in terms of like construction industry, I think, and as I said, I will also share the report with you. There are the only points where we actually went into trying to identify green skills, which are required and are emerging in this sector. Is just by I mean, it's not too detailed if you would say like really detailed in understanding the impacts, etc. So in the SNA process, it was really getting more a sense of where and what industry thinks is the most priority in terms of green skills. But then when we actually go into understanding the, like say for example, go into specific occupations and understanding the different competency standards like being put in place in there. This is more done at the level of the TESDA's Green Technology Center team, who actually really goes through all these training regulations and tries to input specific modifications to ensure like that the competency standard is more aligned to greening than it was before. Say, for example, it could be noting very specific materials, let's say for construction, that should be preferred because of their sustainability, because of its lesser environmental impact, or it could even be referring to very specific processes that has to be preferred because they're more environment friendly compared to others, or they're less energy intensive. So when those things happen, these happen actually at the technical units of TESDA. And then these are proposed now back to the industry boards, and the industry boards will eventually validate them. We tried looking at it from an inverted side before, and it was actually slower because like, for example, if you would start gathering your industry board to actually look at that from a very granular level and going through it, it's going to take so much time. And
So you
specifically
basically,
because you
sorry, you basically
yes,
had
go ahead.
experts, you had basically technical sector experts in your team that would then kind of look at the
Yes.
technologies and advancements in the sector and the
Right.
occupations and make sure they, and then I understand.
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Yes, yes. So actually, yeah, TESDA has very specific teams looking after all the different occupational groups. So, and one of their commitments to this greening, TVET, is to really have one unit which is focused on green interventions, green skills, ensuring that they respond to green requirements in the labor market. So there is one unit that does that. And because they believe that they have to really do it across all these different occupations that they have qualifications for. It could be very different when you talk about, say, for example, digitalization, because that one had to really rely on the process that will be agreed with at the industry board level. But because this one had the commitment that they wanted to have all their competency standards greened, and that's why there's a team internally. But normally, yes, you would naturally tap the help of experts because your industry boards are representatives of the sector and not necessarily the technical experts. So these technical experts help them. And there is always resources allocated by the national agency for that, and including, say, for example, if there are projects coming in from the UN or from the ILO or from any of the multinational development banks who would like to support specific sectors, that can be done so to fast track the process. Yeah, thanks, Dragana.
Thank you very much. Any other question? Let's take advantage of Georgina, who has really gone through the concrete process of social dialogue, which we clearly understood is not easy at all. But I am more curious about the tool you've used. How did you vulgarize them? How did you engage the stakeholders to use them? How did I guess there are ILO tools or there are national tools for
Yes,
the
they
social
are
dialogue?
ILO.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think in terms of the social dialogue at the national level, because as I've said, it has been embedded even in the laws and the mandate. Very much, they actually go through the usual national tripartite mechanisms of dialogue, and that they also get themselves represented in the board when the TESDA was actually formed. Now, in terms of using this recent one in greening of TVET, and where we also introduced the skills needs anticipation as a tool, this is actually an ILO tool. So we guided one unit, which is the planning unit within the technical, the TESDA board, the TVET national agency, to actually work with us in first, of course, trying to find a sector who would like to work with them. And as such, looking at the priorities of the key employment generators and seeing who is more likely and eager, open to collaborate with us. And that is this construction industry through the Philippine Contractors Association. In which case, also, when we tried to introduce the tool, we of course provided technical assistance. So that's the ILO helping to design the survey questionnaires, also running it out with them. Like, we also supported them in terms of having these initial meetings so that there could be a very clear understanding of what we need to achieve. So the industry board, together with the TVET authority, alongside with the support of the ILO. One of the key things that we have to get support for, or that we have to provide support for at the end of the day, is to understand and interpret the results of the survey. Because as I've said, aside from making it statistically relevant in terms of like how many, and then we collect all the responses and all that, there is of course some expertise needed, which may not necessarily be already in the TVET agency, that has to be put in place. And in which case, actually, those team members that we are working with at the TVET have undergone training also with the ITC. And we also like somehow made them work with a technical expert on understanding results of surveys like this, so that the consecutive ones that they did, which eventually on BPO, and then currently right now on logistics and in agriculture, is already in-house, is done in-house. So I mean, that's in terms of the tool, no? So I think because some level of expertise is really needed to make sure that the tool is the tool eventually comes out with outputs that they can use for policy guidance, and also for providing inputs into the greening of specific sectoral occupational training regulations. But in as far as I think the social dialogue process is concerned, like, they do understand, because as I've said, we are the ILO, and we naturally always promote working with tripartite partners, and also trying to mainstream other partners who could be relevant to their sectors. And so in which case, that's why right now they are considering this area-based skills needs anticipation mapping, because they do understand that now it differs depending on which location or which province or which region they are actually trying to forward TVET promotion. So, I mean, at every point in time, I think this is now the relevance of our work, and because we wanted to offer it as part of guiding them. And I suppose all the others who are also part of this class would be eventually in a similar role. So when you propose these things, it's not like it's going to move on its own. So definitely we'd have to craft ways by which we ensure that it produces, the initiatives produces exactly the outputs that we need, and the outputs that they can use. No? So it doesn't remain an academic exercise. Right.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Actually, just maybe for a further clarification for our participants, Georgina was referring to a tool on greening TVET, which will be introduced to you next week.
Yeah.
And as a conclusion of our
Yeah.
course, it served then as a kind of template for the Philippines to develop their greening process. So yeah, you can, of course, have more insight about it next week. But you've already gained some concrete feedback from our colleagues on that. I know that maybe we won't going to discuss about it now, but I know that UNESCO has also this kind of tools, and we have
Yes.
some participants. Let me just verify. I think we have someone from UNESCO. Maybe you would like to share any support UNESCO has provided for social dialogue or for policy development in the green and skills area. I am just checking if we have Marina here. I'm not sure if she's there.
Yeah.
Okay,
she's
maybe we
not
can.
logged
Yeah,
in.
not sure she's
Yeah.
connected, but okay, maybe other organization. We have also GIZ, the European Union delegation to Myanmar. Bettina, don't know if you would like to share any support to government or to national constituents on this social dialogue or on this policy development regarding greening and TVET.
Unfortunately, there is no dialogue between the European Union and the junta government since the coup in 2021. We had a sizable budget support program that started in 2019 and which was discontinued after the coup d'etat. In fact, we had to reorient our complete program in education from what was actually quite a fruitful support to, among others, also TVET, TVET legislation, TVET Council, TVET policy, and we are now actually rolling out project-based approach through NGOs in conflict-affected border areas, skills training, but also this has become more and more difficult due to the evolving conflict. Unfortunately, I cannot report about any success stories.
No worries, Bettina. It's already important to understand the context of the country where you are based.
Okay, no problem.
I don't know if our colleagues from GIZ would like to come up with some examples or maybe some initiatives. Victoria, I see Victoria connected. I'm sorry, I just designated the volunteers.
Yeah. You volunteered them. Really.
Yeah, exactly.
But the GIZ has been supporting a lot of TVET initiatives before, also in the Philippines, together with Tesla. So very much, I think, is the dual training system. Yeah, so would be something that they can share.
Yeah, please.
Yes, go
I've heard
ahead.
someone. Suzanne, maybe?
I think that's Suzanne, but I hope her audio is good now.
Yes, we can hear you, but the sound is quite low.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, I have. Sorry, I have very bad connection today. Can you hear me a bit better now? Yes, hello.
Yes, we can hear you better now. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, Suzanne.
Hi, Nomi?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. I would like, I like to contribute with the current endeavors in Ethiopia for greening occupational standards. And its current tourism sector, we identified that the World Tourism and Travel Council had already developed hotel sustainability basic standards And we are planning to integrate them into the occupational standards related to the hotel industry.
Okay. Okay, so this is a forcing process. So maybe would you like to give some hints to Susan this area, Georgina? Just maybe just to recall.
Right. I think the world global
And we are
standards
exactly at the point
industry. Yeah, go ahead, Suzanne.
now with the social dialogue. I'm talking about the hotel sustainability basic standards. They are, from my perception, very suitable to be integrated in any kind of occupational standards related to the hotel industry. And because they are sustainable, they are green, and we integrate them. And we are in the point now to facilitate the social dialogue between the industry, the government, the associations, the training institutes.
I'm sorry, Suzanne, the sound is quite bad, but I think we got what you wanted to share with us, and thank you very much for that. You were saying that you were currently on a social dialogue process in order to develop greening TVET on tourism sector in Ethiopia. I didn't really get if you had a question or not. But maybe you can also drop a message in the chat so we can clearly understand. But maybe, Georgina, would you have any to start the process? What would you say to Susan?
Yeah.
From
Actually,
a
I
sectoral
think
approach.
Suzanne had, yeah, the sectoral approach. I think Suzanne had a good basis for engaging with all the different stakeholders there because of the use of these global standards for travel and tourism, that they would want to integrate that in the occupational standards in the hotel industry. So, I mean, that Ethiopia being, if they are actually moving forward to make their tourism destinations like more globally competitive, referring to a global standard such as the one that she mentioned is very important. Now, the social dialogue process would be keen for this because if these standards are implemented or are mainstreamed in the occupations, they would naturally require some investments from the employer side or from the industry side. They would require some resources from the government side to actually ensure compliance if this eventually becomes part of some standards or performance standards for the tourism in the area. And then at the same time, they have to craft or at least identify the timelines by which they expect that all these standards are already complied with, not only in the occupations, but I suppose occupations would be a good start, but that would also mean even the operational requirements of these hotels. If they eventually would be following the global standards, then all this whole compliance system, the government system, there could be some certifications required as well. That's why I think it definitely would be good to start with the social dialogue so that everybody just understands what it means, no, to them, and understands what their contribution should be if the intent of the sector is to actually adopt and implement those standards. So I mean, that's I think one of the most important things that they need to highlight when they do the social dialogue, and eventually also to check if what the challenges would be, so that if there are recommendations to address these, which eventually would also come from the very same people who are in that dialogue process, I suppose that would also actually be a good point to move forward with regards to plans on implementation.
Thank you very much, Georgina, and thank you,
Yes.
Suzanne, for your contribution.
Thank you.
Maybe, yeah, please go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much.
Unfortunately, the sound is very bad. Sorry,
I just said
Suzanne.
thank you very much, Georgina. And next week we will. Yes, sorry.
If you could maybe drop a message on the chat box. I'm sorry for that. We would really love to hear you to contribute live, but I think that the sound is we have an issue with the sound and the internet connectivity, I think. Another question. I have a last one, but let's see if someone else would have the same as mine. No? No further question from our participants. So my question, Georgina, is about interpretation of the results of the
Yes, I know
surveys.
that.
I'm sorry. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so how did you involve all the stakeholders? Because sometimes I suppose that you were referring to the interpretation of the surveys to understand what type of skills should be greened, right? Or what new skills are required for toward the greening process. So how much was the involvement of the stakeholders during this interpretation, and also do you approach any expert to help to understand better, for example, this kind of skills, and to how to translate them into competencies?
Right. Thanks for that, Noemi. I think I was also referring to two things now in terms of my statements earlier. First is understanding the results of the S&A process as a tool. So definitely we actually tapped into an expert, a human resource development expert, to actually help us better understand whether the survey outputs that we have actually gathered can actually give us these skills that is required, or like these results, and understanding better what are the current level of demand, and including also the kind of because, so as we've said, it's a skills survey and a satisfaction survey at the same time. No? So they tried to put it together because they wanted that survey to be also a platform for the different stakeholders involved in the survey to surface out concerns. Now that's why, whether it's a level for satisfaction or it's a gap that needs to be filled in. So for that one, yes, we did have to get validation from, of course, an HRD and skills development expert to help us better understand the survey responses that we got. Now, in terms of translating those results into what can be put in as additional competencies or new skills that we have to highlight in the training regulations, this was the one where we actually involved industry technical experts. Let's say, for example, this is why the Philippine Constructors Association, which is the industry board for the construction sector, they also shared the time of their experts, or those who are very much knowledgeable into the training requirements, the current industry requirements for skills in the sector and for specific occupations, to help to actually learn or hear about the results of the survey, and to actually match that with the realities that they see. So we were at that time talking to members coming from their HR offices. So aside from, of course, those who are members of the board, and which represent, of course, like employers, management, workers, and so on and so forth. We specifically requested for those for members who could actually share with us sometime with some of their HR officials, so that they can actually give us more guidance on how to mainstream them into training regulations. One thing that's quite interesting is, like, particularly for construction, because mainly they do have a lot of manpower requirement. These big member companies have specific training centers on their own as well. So they have training leads. They have really good people who could also support the work of the TVET agency in terms of understanding these things better. So aside from the in-house technical experts that they always have, because they have also a pool of trainers and a pool of industry experts, we were complemented by those representatives from the Philippine Constructors Association. So I think, and this is now where it differs depending on the sector. So I suppose in terms of, if you're talking about the hotel industry, they might find a similar setup as to construction, because the main mover of that sector is actually the people inside it, right? I mean, but then it could be different when you talk about, because it's not service oriented. If the sector is not service oriented and more on, like, say, semiconductors, and will be robotics and all of that, then perhaps it's not necessarily part of the training, but you may be needing a technical expert on a specific subject matter. So it depends on what the sector has. And this is actually where our interface with the industry board becomes very important, because they know the sector better and they can actually tell you what the realities are, and then they can actually provide you, like, who the best leads would be to help support, like, say, for example, updating these training requirements.
Thank you very much, Georgina, for this very insightful presentation and also contribution. We are reaching the end of the session. I hope that everyone can conclude with a takeaway from this session, which was really interesting, because we are not talking about concrete action, how to involve actors, how to involve stakeholders, and how to conduct a process to implement greening initiatives on TVET. Thank you very much for your for sharing, Georgina. It was really insightful for all of us, and also a very important session. And thank you for your time as well, once again, because it's very late in Philippines now. And so, dear participants, we will meet again next week with another module, and this is the last module of our training, actually. So next week, if you have any question to ask, please put it in the forum so we can give feedback on time. You can also prepare some questions regarding the ILO tools on greening TVET, because we are going to discuss in depth about it. Georgina has already touched upon it as an introduction to next week model. And yes, so Philippines is one of the examples of the country who was trained on these ILO tools, and I think this was also one of the how to say that, one of technical mean that led Philippines in this process. So that's why Philippines is also a good example. We've also deployed these tools for Thailand and Cambodia, and recently for Guyana. So let's see what will happen from these countries. But for the time being, Philippines is a very good example from us, since we've implemented this tool on greening TVET. And yeah, so next week we will dedicate more time about the tool, and you will know much better about it. Thank you very much, everyone. And then don't hesitate to come back to us if you have any questions. And of course, we will share the recording and the presentation of Georgina in our eCampus. And maybe last word from our guests, and then we will conclude. A final word.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Noemi. I think I also enjoyed immensely I just hope that this won't be the last time that we get to interface, because I'd be very interested also to hear out what's happening in the region and how Green Skills and Green TVET is moving forward in other contexts. So looking forward, perhaps not now, but sometime in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye. Take care and see you next week. Thank you, Georgina.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Noemi. See you
Bye-bye.
again soon. Bye, everyone.
You.
Thank
Ciao,
you.
ciao.